Вітаємо вас, пані Марина.
Welcome, Maryna.
Good
morning. So the Selection Commission is starting the interview with you. This is a part of the selection to the HQCJ of Ukraine, the second stage. And the interview is conducted by the full Selection Commission. Let me introduce the members: Robert Brookhuizen, Ivan Mishchenko, Serhiy Verlanov, Ivan Mezentsev, and Stephen Markman. The reporters at your interview are Serhiy Verlanov and Robert Brookhuizen. In case our interview, Maryna, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's also a pleasure for us to meet you. In case the interview with you is interrupted for technical reasons, we will reschedule it. During the interview, you will be asked questions, and the request is to give concise answers to the question, and the commissioner can limit the time of your answer. Before the interview, you will have a chance to tell about your decision, why you decided to apply for the selection process to the HQCJ, and you can also present your ideas. So that's all from me. Let me give the floor to Serhiy and Robert. Good morning, Maryna. So let me tell in brief about your biography. Soloviova Maryna, born on 16th of November 1961, higher legal education, graduated from Kyiv National University of Economics. Her work record in the field of law is more than 20 years, more than 22 years to be more specific. Since the 3rd of January 2014, she's been a member of the Special Commission of Vetting Judges of Courts of General Jurisdiction. Then in March, starting with July that year, she was the secretary of the Interim Special Commission Vetting Judges of the Courts of General Jurisdiction. In 2006, she got the certificate to practice law, and she was then elected to the first composition of the Public Integrity Council affiliated with the HQCJ. In 2011-2019, upon the official invitation, she participated in the sessions of UNESCO as an independent observer from representing Ukrainian civil society organizations, and then she was elected member of the Public Council affiliated with Shevchenkivsky District Administration of Kyiv. Maryna, you have up to 5 minutes to tell about yourself, to tell about your motivation for applying for the selection, for being a member of the HQCJ. Good morning, dear commissioners. I'm really grateful to you for selecting me for the interview stage. I'm Maryna Soloviova. I've got 2 higher education diplomas. The first one is technical, the second one is legal. In 2006, I got the certificate to practice law, and I represent legal entities and individuals in courts. Mostly these are cases related to the protection of the lands of historical and cultural designation and the right to construction and development. So I mainly deal with the development of chaotic buildings which destroy historical centers in our key cities. In 2014, I was elected a government commissioner on anti-corruption policy, and I worked within the Interim Special Commission on Vetting of Judges. After the Maidan, the society came to understand that our judiciary is really not independent. The things happening during the period of the Maidan, when activists were imprisoned on the basis of court decisions, when their driving licenses were taken away, when peaceful gatherings and peaceful assemblies were prohibited, the society came to understand that the judiciary is not an independent branch of power and required to establish some responsibility for judges who pass those decisions. The law of Ukraine on the restoration of trust in the judiciary was adopted on the revival of trust. And under that law, the mandate of the members of the High Council of Justice were terminated, the same as the mandate of the High Qualification Commission of Ukraine and the Interim Special Commission for Vetting Judges of Courts of General Jurisdiction was established. It had to check the activity of the Maidan, of the decisions of the Maidan period. And I was elected a member of that commission, as well as the secretary of that Interim Special Commission of Vetting of Judges. I think that the commission started dismantling of the judiciary that had been built to follow the interests of certain political elites and political groups. We worked in a well-balanced manner. It was difficult to work, but we were really persistent. However, the judiciary was resisting. That's why within 1 year we failed to do everything we wanted. But I think that what we did is really of importance for restoration of trust in the judiciary. If you give me an opportunity later, I will probably tell you more about the work of this Interim Special Commission on Vetting of Judges. Then in 2016, I was elected to the first composition of the Public Integrity Council, where I worked for 2 years. I think that my experience of working in those two bodies gives me some advantages and enables me to and makes me willing to continue with this activity within the HQCJ of Ukraine. I've got some background, I've got some experience. I'm willing to work in this direction in the team of like-minded people. That's why I have applied for this selection. I cannot but tell that I'm the head of the public organization Andriivski Landscape Initiative. It was established to counteract and resist chaotic constructions in the historical centers of Kyiv. And we were to unite people who had this objective. This is the only NGO that directly cooperates with the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, and every year we prepare our report, which is different from the report prepared by the Ministry of Culture. And they listen to us, and our representatives are invited from year to year to participate in the UNESCO session. And since 2011, we have been participating in UNESCO sessions as independent observers, and sometimes we are given the floor to speak at that session. And once we even I would say that our speech changed the resolution on Ukraine that they passed at that session. But our NGO does not only go to courts to sue those who are destroying historical centers. We have also participated in a number of important projects, which is in particular the so-called Desetina Church in Kyiv. They were trying to, the Moscow Patriarchate was trying to build there a large church. And they were going to do this on the basis of the foundation of the old church. And Kirill, the Patriarch of Russia, and Putin were supposed to come there and to tell that that is where the place where Moscow and Russia started. But we stopped this. Together with the Kyiv administration, Kyiv city, Kyiv regional administration, we managed to stop it, to stop this project, to stop this scheme. And we ensured preservation of the foundation of this Desetina church. And no money was allocated to that project, thanks God. The people who probably know what the Desetina church is. It is the 10th century of this millennium, and people were giving money for the project to restore the foundation of this Desetina church. And I'm inviting you to that place to have a look at it. That is the place of strength, a very well-known place in the center of Kyiv. Also, we implemented a very interesting project, and I'm thankful to God that I had something to do with it. That was the restoration of one of the UNESCO heritage sites. I can see that I'm pressed of time, so I don't have any other time. So thank you for your attention. And can I still tell about my vision? Well, Maryna, we've got your motivation. You've explained it in brief, and you also explained it in a motivation letter. Now let's go over to questions we would like to ask you, and you will have a chance to disclose what else you can tell. So here is the first question. We can see that you have a great experience of working with the bodies that had to deal with the reform of the judiciary. So on the basis of this experience and knowing the pros and cons of your work in those positions, what lessons would you learn? What would you take with you for the work to the newly established HQCJ, and what would you leave in the past, being afraid of or reserved to repeat it? Well, I think that transparency is important. Every candidate keeps using this word, and I also think that transparency of the HQCJ's operation should be ensured, and accountability to the society should be ensured. It should work with the PIC. Communication things should be in the focus of attention, because they will enable the HQCJ to work with the PIC. And then we will have synergy, the synergy that will help us complete all the reforms. For us, well, not us, but for the members of the HQCJ and the members of the Public Integrity Council to have the same values, to have the same objectives, and to work for the sake of the purification of the judiciary and the revival of trust in the judiciary. I think that this is really important. It's important to have this communication and interaction with the Public Integrity Council in the form of joint meetings and discussion of all the problematic issues that either the PIC or the HQCJ have. Thank you, Maryna. No, thank you, Maryna. I would also like to say that it's worth supplementing the mandate of the HQCJ. The members of the HQCJ should have an opportunity and the right to make requests and to get information from the registries and banks the way the NACP does it. This would accelerate the selection process for the candidates, and this would be for the benefit of the HQCJ. I also think that the Commission should check and read all the motions, not only the ones made by the Public Integrity Council, but made by any single individual observer who's writing about some things. Everything should be studied and checked. And if there are some signs that there has been an illegal decision passed or unreasoned and motivated decision passed, the HQCJ should have a mandate to initiate disciplinary proceedings in order to see what has really happened. And suppose this decision was cancelled by higher instances, they should have the mandate to do this, to demand materials in the case, to see whether the judge did not abuse his power and mandate. It seems to me this would be quite appropriate. I also think that there must be vetting of incumbent judges once in 3 years. And the Public Integrity Council should be involved in that vetting procedure, because that's important. If we have high-quality control, we will have high-quality composition of the judiciary. Thank you, Maryna. It's clear. Thank you. Can I still add a couple of words? Yes. I think that the Public Integrity Council worked during the selection process and the qualification assessment, and it's important that the HQCJ also participates in the examination of people who are being selected, because at that stage it's really important to study all the information. to study, it's necessary to study the way of living, the environment, social media, everything. Because if this is scrupulously studied, we will have new talented people in the judiciary who are good candidates. You know, the previous authorities were adjusted to a certain political elite, but now we should have new talented people thanks to social lefts. And the HQCJ should have a scrupulous look at those people who don't have any commitments to any politicians or political powers of today or of tomorrow. They should serve the people of Ukraine, and that is a really important task. Okay, thank you. Clear. Here is my next question, Maryna. According to the documents you've provided to the Selection Commission, we can see that you do not belong to any political party as for now. But at the same time, we can see from those materials that you were rather active in political activity in the past. And it was 4 times that you were the candidate for the deputies from the political party, the civic position for Kyiv City Council. So why do you think that you are politically neutral now? Well, let me tell you what actually led me. No, don't speak about the background, the reasons that led to that, but just tell why you consider yourself to be politically neutral now. Because in 2016, on my own initiative, I stopped my membership in that political party, and now I don't cooperate with any of the political parties. I don't participate in the activity of the civic position party. In 2020, I was also a candidate for the Kyiv city administration, but that was the offer given to me by Mr. Klitschko as to a civil activist, and I never was a member of the Udar party, which the head of which Mr. Klitschko is, but I was just given this suggestion, and I saw that I could really do something to protect my city and historical center of it. That's why I did this. But no, I'm not involved in any political party. And according to the Bangalore principles, as of the date of your appointment, the judge should not belong to any political party. So I follow this principle. No, I'm not a member of any political party, and I don't cooperate with any political party. Thank you, and here is another question. In your explanations, you claim that you are protecting cultural heritage, and you cooperate with the UNESCO Commission. Please do tell us, in case you are appointed a member of the HQCJ, how will you be combining this public activity with your work in the HQCJ? Well, it's not me alone who works in this NGO. There are other members who will continue doing this work. I do not get any salary there. This is just an NGO. And I will just be giving some prompts, giving some consultations, but in case I'm elected a member of the HQCJ, I will fully dedicate my work to this commission, and I will quit all the other positions, like the position of the head of this force. Thank you, Maryna. Let me give the floor for questions to my co-rapporteur, Mr. Robert Brookhuizen. You're welcome, Robert.
Good morning, Maryna.
Good morning, Robert.
I see that from the documents that you are a lawyer, which means, let's say, you have an individual practice of law. And I believe, am I right, that you act as an attorney?
Right, you are. Absolutely right.
What kind of clients do you represent?
Most of my clients are NGOs, civil society organizations, as well as legal entities and individuals that try to protect Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, against illegal developments, illegal construction. But this is the majority, but there are also some other clients And shall I inform all the types of proceedings I'm involved in?
No, not all of them. That would be a long story, I guess. So I understand you are an NGO lawyer. Is that a correct description? An activist lawyer? Yes?
Yes, yes.
And do you also act for politicians?
No. I don't represent the interests of politicians and I don't work for politicians.
Okay. But I guess that you do know a lot of politicians.
Yes, sure, I am acquainted with a lot of politicians.
And that you socially have lots of contacts with them.
Well, that's what I actually wanted to tell you. For example, how I got acquainted with Anatoly Hrytsenko. So when we were protecting one of the sites, which was the so-called landscape alley, and the land plot was provided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. So this site was really important for the city, and the case was really difficult because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a very influential opponent. So when I came to know that this is the buffer area of Sofia of Kyiv, which is the UNESCO heritage list item, I had to address some politicians because otherwise, well, it was difficult to make judges convinced that they should protect these land plots. The judges said, here is the UNESCO convention, but that is not a binding document. We cannot just be following the UNESCO convention. That's why I addressed some influential politicians, and I wrote letters to Yulia Tymoshenko, to Mr. Yatsenyuk, Anatoly Hrytsenko, and Mr. Turchynov. And the only person who gave me the answer was Anatoly Hrytsenko, a famous politician as well.
Okay, but you are a real lawyer, right? You give answers to questions that are even not asked, which is, of course, very good, but we would like to avoid that in this commission. Am I right to think that you only know, let's say, a certain type of politicians, which means politicians who agree with your, let's say, view on society?
Yes, yes. And I'm also acquainted with Vitaly Klitschko, who's the mayor of Kyiv, because I work together with Kyiv City Council and Kyiv Regional State Administration. So he's also an acquaintance of mine, but that's because I deal with the projects where the Kyiv City Council and Regional Administration are involved. Otherwise, I don't cooperate with any other politicians, and of course, I don't represent their interests.
Yeah. Would you agree with me that politically neutral means that you are neutral towards anybody, whatever his political view or background? And if I listen to you, I could have questions with your political neutrality, or because you have many contacts in part of the political atmosphere in Ukraine, and you do not have many contacts in other political background in Ukraine. And yeah, I may think, but I don't know, of course, how Ukraine functions, that there is a difficulty with your political neutrality.
I don't have any problems, and I don't think that you may have any doubts concerning my political neutrality, because I do not cooperate with any single political force for the moment. Well, and context, and I dealt with the case of the Hostinny Dvir, it's the title of the site. I was invited to roundtable discussions to the parliament, and of course I was approached during that case by some famous, well-known politicians. We had some talks, they asked me questions, I gave them answers, and vice versa. Of course, I had some contacts with them, but this doesn't mean that there may be any pressure exercised by them on me, or that I have any relationship with them.
Okay. Well, let's say that you are appointed in the HQCJ. Let's say that you are appointed in the HQCJ, and you will see there, let's say, many judges. Will they consider you to be politically neutral? Because the same as judges, the people to be appointed in the HQCJ should not only be politically neutral, but they should also be seen to be politically neutral. What do you think that the people who you will see from your position in the HQCJ will look at you?
Well, if these people want to inquire something about me, they can just open any sources, any mass media, any media. Have a look what I have been writing. I have a blog called On the Left Bank, and also I have some articles in Ukrainska Pravda, so they can read, have a look, and to understand what it's all about.
Yeah,
and
but
if
then,
they're my personal acquaintances, they generally know that I'm not politically engaged.
Yeah, the point is, I'm talking about perception. If I think, but I am not able to read them, that if I open all your publications, I see someone who's an activist. And then I think, if I am not an activist, or if I do not agree with the views that you have, that you're not politically neutral. That's the point.
Well, I think that I cannot be sure that I'm perceived as politically engaged. I think that I have not been cooperating with any political force for quite a long period of time.
Thank you.
And all of my achievements, all my work shows this, testifies to this.
Thank you. I will pass the floor to Justice Markman.
Thank you very much for your participation, Ms. Soloviova. You clearly have vast experience and history in the realm of judicial reform, but yet that reform today is not completed or fully successful. And most of all, this commission, I think, wants to facilitate complete and successful judicial reform. Could you please share with us your own views as to how we can take confidence that you will be on the side, if you are placed on the High Qualifications Commission, how you will be on the side of effective and successful reform and not on the side of failed and unsuccessful reform? What have you learned from your experience? What mistakes have been made? Perhaps what mistakes have you made? But how can we take comfort that as we move forward, you, Maryna Soloviova, are on the side of successful reform going forward? Can you please share your thoughts on that?
I've already mentioned that cooperation should be established with the Public Integrity Council, so that's what I I would actually try to do. And together not we, but members of the HQCJ could achieve a lot if they work together with the BIC, if they have common tasks, objectives, and values. Much more can be done. The reform could be accelerated. And I think that my experience of working in the Interim Specialized Commission on Vetting of Judges in the PIC, my willingness to continue with this process of revival of trust in the judiciary really matter. They show you that I will be on the side of the reform. I will be working at the revival of the trust. Do you know what? I'm very much willing to do the following. In case I am elected a member of the HQCJ, and then for years after that I get back to practicing law, to my attorney's activity, I would like, the way Robert said during one of the interviews, to be able to tell my clients that I will do my best, whatever I can, for our position to be correct. But I don't know whether you will win the case, but I can guarantee you that the court will really produce a fair decision. So that's the direction I would like to work in. I want the judicial reform to be effective and quick. I want the judicial vacancies to be filled, of which we have 2,113. I want courts to be with judges, for us not to be facing the challenges that we are facing now in the judiciary. I can tell you about my experience, but I will not probably do this now. And I've already mentioned all the things I would do if I became a member of the HQCJ. I would increase the mandate of the HQCJ and do some other things.
But when you sit down, if you're placed on the HQCJ, when you sit down for the first time with a young colleague who doesn't have your history and experience and seeks your counsel on what needs to be done by the new High Qualifications Commission, is there something you would say to him? These are the mistakes I made. You shouldn't do this. You should try to do better in that area. You should try to take a different approach as to this matter and a different approach as to that matter. Is there something you would share with that young colleague and say, we have to succeed this time, and my experience has brought with it some mistakes and some missteps, and let me try to make sure you avoid those same mistakes and missteps?
Well, I know that there will be 8 judges in the HQCJ and 8 people who are not judges. So I think that from the very beginning, there will have to be some communications until the work of the HQCJ goes on. Yes, I can tell about the mistakes and about what was done in the wrong way. The mistake was not establishing proper communication with the PIC. This is not the first composition of the Public Integrity Council now, and then there will be a new composition of the HQCJ, so I think it will be much easier to establish this communication. I worked in the PIC with young people, and we somehow managed to reach consensus. We worked as one whole team, and I would say that we worked rather effectively over these 2 years. We studied we examined 400 judges, scientists, and academicians who were the applicants for the Supreme Court, and almost 1,000 judges who passed took their qualification assessment. Of course, there were some drawbacks, there were some mistakes, and definitely I will share the information about those mistakes with young people.
And there have been successes too, you believe, have there not been?
Well, sure. I think that majorly these were successes, but of course there were mistakes. I think that the Public Integrity Council did quite a lot. There were a lot of success stories, and it should keep working, and because it ensures civil society's control over the system. This is a very important component, and I think that the PSC worked quite well, and it was really helping the HQCJ.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Soloviova. Let me pass you on to my colleague, Judge Zarzeczny, please.
Yes, good day, Ms. Soloviana. I want to pick up on some of the questions that you were asked in the area of politics. You tell us that among other things, most recently in 2019, you ran for the position for MP from the Civil Position political party. That's the same political party for which you ran as a candidate for a People's Deputy in 2014. And now, MP, well, what do you understand MP to mean? I need to know what that is. Is that the Member of Parliament?
Yes, MP means Verkhovna Rada. I was a member of the parliament. I wanted to be a member of the parliament. And I was the representative of the civil position political party, but I was only a member of the coordination board of that political party. I was no longer a member of it, but it's according to the rules of our country that you can actually do this, not being a member of this party any longer.
That was the last election, was it not, for People's Deputy or a Member of Parliament?
Right, Jan, right.
Right, and then in 2020, you ran for the position of a deputy of the Kiev City Council. Yes, and
right, and I've already mentioned that Mr. Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev, made this suggestion, made this invitation to me because I was a civil activist, society activist, and the person who was very much concerned about the problems of the city. So that's why he suggested that I would run for the election from his party, but I was never a member of this party. I just ran for a candidate as a civil society activist, a public activist who wanted just to preserve Kiev's heritage.
yes, I didn't ask you why you ran. I simply asked you a simple question, and that is whether you ran as a deputy for the Kiev City Council. Was that the last election for the City Council? All right, so let me summarize my understanding here. In 2014, you ran as a candidate for the People's Deputy of Ukraine from a political party civil position. In 2015, you ran as a deputy for a deputy position in the Kiev City Council. And then I see that in 2016, you were elected. I presume you ran. You were elected a member of the Public Integrity Council. In 2019, the last election for the Verkhovna Rada, you ran. And in 2020, you ran for a deputy position in the Kiev City Council at the last city election. And you say that you are not a politician. Now, quite frankly, I don't know what your definition of politician is. However, I take you to be a politician, whether you are running as a result of a civil society position or as a result of personal preferences. You have an interest in the environment. You have been running for public office from 2014 until 2020, and you haven't run for anything since because there are no elections for anything. What is your understanding of being a politician? And the reason I ask this question is because with this degree of political involvement, you will have encountered and met many people of influence. And you are now applying to be part of a public body that must be absolutely free of outside influence. Does that not provide a contradiction? You yourself have been attempting to influence decisions being made in the area, for example, of heritage properties, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you would be familiar with influence. How will you resist influence from those very many people in position of influence, like the mayor of Kiev, who invited you to run as a deputy, for example, in your work as a member of the HQCJ?
Thank you for the question. Well, you know, Mr. Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev, invited me to the election right due to the fact that I had a lot of court cases appealing the decisions of Kiev City Council about provision of land plots for development purposes in the areas of cultural and historical designation. He knows that I am a purposeful person and that you cannot reach any consensus, in inverted commas, with me. You cannot exert pressure on me. Even if you ask me that I quit some case, that won't go. We have had a lot of different disputes and topics, and I think that all politicians know that they cannot influence me, that I'm impartial and unbiased, and that they cannot exert any pressure on me. You know, when I was protecting this landscape alley site, my opponents were really influential people. This was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, headed by Mr. Hrishchenko first, and then by Mr. Poroshenko, and then by Mr. Yatsenyuk. And they all wanted to have the apartment in the building that was supposed to be built on that landscape alley site. But I did not make any single mistake. I didn't reach any consensus with them, in inverted commas. And I actually brought the case to the end. We canceled the decision of the Kyiv City Council. We canceled some other regulatory documents. And we arranged, with the money of donors and citizens, the first landscape square on that landscape alley. And not a single politician managed to exert pressure on me for me to make a mistake and to reach some consensus on the basis of the pressure exercised by them, no matter how influential these politicians are. So I think that nobody can exert pressure on me. And I think that everybody knows about this fact.
Well, let me just pursue that very briefly. Was it not your intention with all of these political activities to influence decisions?
Well, I did this because I know the legislation on the cultural and historical heritage very well. And I wanted, well, I know the pros and cons, and I wanted to increase the number of pros, of the number of advantages in the legislative field in order to better protect our heritage and culture. You know, heritage and culture, in particular now, during the wartime, should be the basis for the morale of our state, and the legislation should protect such things. So this running for the positions was kind of continuation of my civic activity. I just wanted to have something to do with the legislative changes on the create heritage, on cultural and historical heritage. It was not the goal by itself to become a member of the parliament or a politician. I just had some objectives, some tasks related to the legislation, and that's what I wanted to do.
All right. Thank you. Let me change the subject. My last question deals with the Public Integrity Council and your work on the Public Integrity Council. Now, I take it that was volunteer work.
Yes, you're right.
Now, I think one of the challenges with respect to effective operation of the Public Integrity Council is exactly that point, that it is a volunteer organization. And I'd be interested in knowing whether or not you think that members of the Public Integrity Council, as is the case, of course, with members of the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and they're working in the same area and same field, whether or not members of the Public Integrity Council should be paid, and if so, by whom?
So when I was a member of PIC, it was a very responsible and very difficult work. I was checking those candidates who I was assigned with, and I had to read those conclusions prepared by my colleagues. I had to review the materials on which the conclusions were based, because I was supposed to vote for the decisions, and the work took all of my time. I had to stay up late at night, and sometimes I showed up at work on Saturdays and Sundays just to talk to my clients, because otherwise I didn't have enough time. And that's not how it should look like. Yes, you can be a volunteer, but you can allot some time to your volunteer work, and working for several years on end without any kind of remuneration is very difficult. Maybe it was easier for other members of the PIC, but as a responsible person, I believe that members of PIC are entitled to some kind of remuneration. You cannot work for 2 years without getting any type of salary, without having another job, because you need to buy food, clothing, you need to maintain your family. I think that this kind of difficult job must be paid for. If you're asking me whether it should be paid from the state budget, then no, because it's no longer civil society. I think that we can look for some other ways, some other sources where we could find the funding to pay people working at PIC. This is my final opinion. That's something that I thought back at the time, because we had a great workload, and the work is really responsible. It was very difficult for me to combine working on PIC with me being a lawyer. I had to lose many of my clients. So it was very difficult for me, and what was really difficult for all those who were in the first composition of PIC. Because we had a lot of materials that we had to process.
I have my answer. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I have my answer, and I need to pass things over to my colleague, Mr. Mezentsev, because I know he has some questions as well. Thank you.
As usual, I have some. Доброго дня, пані Марино. Моє прізвище Мезенцев.
Good afternoon, Maryna. My last name is Mezentsev. So I will be finishing our first round of questions. So let me continue with that topic raised by Tad with regards to PIC.
колишні члени ГРД
So it's really nice that former members of PIC are amongst our candidates to be appointed for HQCJ, because we'd like to see some of these people amongst HQCJ members and see how they can apply the experience and professional skills they have acquired in practice, how they can use those skills in order to change the vision of the judiciary. So let's talk about the relations between HQCJ and PIC. One of the most recent concepts in the development of PIC, which is reflected in the anti-corruption program for the upcoming 2 years. So this concept mentions that we need to elevate the status of the opinions provided by PIC, which can be overridden only during a joint meeting of HQCJ members and a joint meeting of HQCJ and PIC members, and half of PIC members should vote for overriding their own decision. So could you please tell us, do you support this concept? Is it beneficial in any way in light of the recent events, if we are talking about fighting corruption? Yes, I support this idea. I think it can be beneficial. But I'd like to tell you that PIC is working as civil society representatives, and HQCJ should work as a court. HQCJ must have enough evidence in order to make this or that decision. That's why we need to have this established communication between the two bodies, where we have discussions between HQCJ and PIC. Yes, Maryna, you've already mentioned that your position is clear, and I agree with you. But if we elevate the status of the opinions provided by PIC and make them binding, then the decisions of PIC may be appealed in courts. So I'm already telling you this as a judge of an administrative court. If we elevate the status, it will result in legal consequences, both for candidates and HQCJ, because PIC will have to deal with those appeals, because you understand that judges will not agree to this position. So if we look at this through this lens, the potential for appeals. Right now, the decisions of PIC are not binding, so of course they're not appealed. But what if the situation changes? That is why I mentioned that we need to have better communication, so that during the discussion, members of HQCJ could make members of PIC change their opinion if they provide valid reasoning for that. And as a result, we will get a motivated decision. Yes, thank you, that's clear. In view of your activities, of your professional legal activities, we can see that you are clearly interested in saving cultural heritage. And you are dealing with these cases for many years in a row. You are participating in the UNESCO sessions as an expert, as a lawyer, as a consultant. We can see that this is something you are inspired by. This is a passion of yours. Could you please tell us, why are you so passionate about cultural heritage in general? When I got my second degree and became a lawyer, we didn't have the monopoly of attorneys at law back then. So near my house, we had the Slovakian embassy, and they wanted to build a huge house in place of a square. And the local residents approached a legal firm, but the legal fees were too high. And they told me, Soloviova, you already have a degree, you're a lawyer. Please help us save the square. And it was the buffer zone of the Sofia Kievska Cathedral. And when I studied the UNESCO Convention, I discovered that. So those were the local residents who entrusted me with defending their interests. That was my first project. It was immediately related with me, my neighbors, and my kids. So at the time, the Administrative Procedure Code was adopted. We went to Kyiv court and we won the case. Then in the appellate court, we lost. The High Administrative Court closed the proceedings, and the court said that it was impossible to proceed with the case. And then the Supreme Court upheld the decision of the trial court. So I see that you were so inspired by this first success that you decided to continue with the fight. No, I wanted to take on other cases, but I was approached by people from Pejzažna Aleja site, and they told me, you live near this site, you already have the positive experience, so please help us with this one. And I was forced to help, actually, because there were many civil activists and many people in general who didn't want for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to build a high-rise building with some swimming pools on the roof. That is why we decided to protect the historical site, and then it just snowballed. And the other comment I'd like to make about the judiciary. So I'm dealing with the Hostiny Dvir site, and all the cases were heard by the administrative court of the city of Kyiv, the district administrative court. So there we were appealing the decision of the Kyiv district state administration about allocating that land plot. So they were trying to actually destroy the historical heritage site. Before Maidan, nobody at that Kyiv Circuit Administrative Court paid attention to the documents that we were providing. So they agreed to the destruction of that cultural heritage site. But after Maidan, we went to court and we won all the 6 cases. For some reason, everybody finally saw that it was a cultural heritage site important for all the residents of Kyiv. So we can see how this reflects the situation in the judiciary. The judiciary works for some political powers. The Hostiny Dvir site was in the interests of Mr. Yanukovych. Okay, let's not be this specific because it doesn't really matter within the context of your interview, but I have the next question. What accomplishment in your life, it doesn't have to be a professional accomplishment, do you consider to be the greatest? What is it that you are proud of? I'm proud of my children. I have 2 children. I think this is something that I did right in this life. I'm also proud of the fact that I'm protecting the historical heritage of the city of Kyiv and Ukraine in general, because I believe that history and culture are very important for our people, for our country, for our statehood. And I'm proud of working at the interim committee by the Ministry of Justice at the time when we didn't have the HQCJ and HCJ. I think it was the beginning of the dismantling of the judiciary that we had at the time. And while working there, I was doing my job diligently and honestly. And I'm proud of being a member of the full composition of PIC. Thank you, Maryna. So these are all of my accomplishments. Can I add anything? What else are you proud of? Okay, just tell us. You know, Spas on Berestov site is a place where Yuri Dolgorukiy was allegedly buried, and we restored that site using the money of a donor who gave 75 million for that restoration, and I'm also proud of being involved in the restoration of that site. And today it is the way it looks like, and everybody can see it with their own eyes. I also think it's very important, one of important achievements. Thank you, Marina. Our interview has been going on for an hour, and I think that my colleagues and I can agree that you can speak Ukrainian really well, but at the same time, you provided us with a certificate that you got in March of 2022, and unfortunately, we see that the result is quite poor. Could you please tell us how did it happen, and do you have an opportunity to retake the exam to improve the result? Yes, I'm ready to retake the exam. I was very upset. Those were some difficult life circumstances, and that resulted in me having the poor result on the exam. Yes, because that was March of 2022, the beginning of the war. Maybe there was a complicated psychological state, but you understand that you will have to retake the test in the near future, because we will have to select candidates who have a good exam result. I'm passing the floor to Ivan.
Пані Марино, як киянин,
Marina, as a Kyiv resident, not as a member of the selection commission, when I'm listening to you,
мені одразу хочеться прямо зараз піти і подати якийсь позов
I
проти
want to
незаконної
go
забудови.
and file some lawsuit against illegal construction. You know, it's really inspiring what you're telling us. And
Я кажу вам
as a
за це
Kyiv
величезне
resident, I'm
дякую.
really
Знову ж таки,
thankful
не
to you
як
for
член
what you're doing, not as a member of the
Але чи не
commission, but as a
здається
Kyiv
вам, що
resident.
це досить різка зміна
But
діяльності?
don't you think that this is quite a drastic change in your activities, from saving cultural heritage to selecting judges? Don't you think that these things are not really close? You know that I'm protecting cultural heritage by going to courts, because I file lawsuits against the illegal construction sites that we have in the city centers. When in Odessa, Kyiv, Chernivtsi, we see high-rise buildings in historical centers, this doesn't look very nice, and it's the civil society and lawyers who are to protect their own cities, who are to protect their historical centers from being destroyed, the culture from being destroyed. I want for our children, for our grandchildren, to have the pleasure of walking down historical streets and watch those buildings that were left to us, passed down to us by our parents. If we cannot create anything new, let's at least save the things that we already have. And it's in the courtroom where I'm protecting the cultural heritage. Let me just provide you with one example which motivated me to work towards revival of trust in the judiciary. So it was about the site which is in the buffer zone of the Sofia Kyivska Cathedral. So we went to a court, and a very experienced judge made their decision, and the representative of the developer said, yes, there is this UNESCO convention ratified by Ukraine. Ukraine is a signatory, but the recommendations of the convention have not been ratified, and that was the ground on which the court refused our claim. Their recommendations are not ratified. So I had to take that decision of the court and translate it into English. And when I was present at the UNESCO session, I showed the committee the decision translated into English, and they were really surprised. There was a meeting of lawyers who told me that out of 195 countries, it was the first time that they heard about somebody mentioning recommendations that had to be ratified. They told me that the recommendations were an integral part of the convention and they didn't need to be ratified. Okay, Marina, let's be more precise because your answer is a little bit too long-winded. So let me tell you, what is it? Lacking professionalism or being corrupt, lacking integrity? Thank you, Marina. I heard your answer. So, as a judge of a commercial court, I have some experience with disputes regarding construction in the city of Kyiv. I have some first-hand experience. I was considering some of those cases. And I want to ask you the following. Construction sites do not appear randomly for some unspecified reason. First, somebody signs a rent agreement. Then somebody makes a positive decision. Then there is another person who submits the documents to initiate the construction, and these documents have to be submitted to different government authorities, and somebody at those government authorities approves those documents. Then we have public hearings with regards to those construction sites, and sometimes the results are positive, and then we start with the construction itself. And only after the construction has started, we already have the foundation laid or even more. With all due respect, we only at that stage see people like you and civil society organizations who are upset with such construction sites. Don't you think that regardless of the courts and their decisions, the courts deal with the consequences of what has already happened? But the problem appeared a little bit earlier, don't you think? Because I, as a judge, have never faced this situation when the construction started without any kind of permits or documents, or with counterfeit documents. As a rule, we have all the documents, all the permits, and they are all in order, and the developer tells us, well, the Kyiv City Council approved everything. The Architectural Bureau has approved everything. What's the problem? So, what's the problem? With regards to those sites that I mentioned, I'm referring to the UNESCO Convention, which regulates the relations in the historical center, in the buffer zone of heritage sites. But who should be reading that convention? The Kyiv City Council or the judge? No, the Kyiv City Council. Yes. The Kyiv City Council doesn't approve on the rent, but they first vote about the allocating of the land plot, and we are trying to appeal the decision on the allocation of the land plot. And after all those cases that we have won, the Kyiv City Council currently does not allocate land plots in the historical city center. And that is our achievement, the achievement of lawyers who are protecting the historical center. Yes, I agree with you. But unfortunately, disputes with regards to illegal construction sites are going on and on. on. And the Kyiv City Council is not a body with some international experts. These are the deputies who were elected by the local residents. These are people elected from amongst the Kyiv residents, and they are the ones making the decisions on the allocation of land plots and the possibility for construction development. Yes, I think we are talking about corruption here. Because I know how developers behave. They are really confident, they have a lot of money, they have lots of connections. On multiple occasions, I took the floor at Kyiv City Council trying to prove why we didn't need to have those constructions completed. Well, they can at least say that some of their previous decisions can be cancelled, but they can change their approach. But we are already talking in the realm of very professional things. Thank you.
Назвіть, будь ласка, 3 чи 2 чи 1
Could you
будь-яку
please
кількість до 3 пріоритетних напрямків
tell us
в
about
роботі
1, 2, or 3 priorities in the work of HQCJ, up to 3. To give social lifts to talented people who will be supporting European standards, who will not be connected to any cliques, any clans, and who will not be serving the government, who will not be entitled to anyone. So we need to find these people and then form the judiciary. Priority number 2 is control. I think that every judge must complete some kind of inspection or assessment every 3 years. So the better the control, the better the judiciary. And priority number 3 is to establish better communication with PIC, better interaction with PIC. I think these 3 aspects are very important in the work of HQCJ. Thank you, Maryna. Do we have any additional questions, dear colleagues?
Наша співбесіда з вами добігає кінця.
Your interview is coming to an end.
Будь ласка, підсумуйте її, щоб такого важливого
Could you please
хотіли сказати
summarize it? Is there
наостанок?
anything
Будь ласка.
important that you'd like to tell us? Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a very interesting experience for me to participate in today's interview. I want to wish you to select a worthy composition of HQCJ so that the new HQCJ becomes successful and revives the trust in the judiciary. And I wish all of us for any lawyer after the completion of the judiciary reform and the revival of trust in the judiciary, I wish for every lawyer to say that I will try and win your case, but in any situation, the decision of the court made in the name of Ukraine will be just and fair. Then we will see the economic growth, we will see investment coming into the country, and our partners will see us as equals within the European community. And I want for my children and grandchildren to stay in this country. I don't want for them to travel to other countries in search of a better life. And for this very purpose, I'm ready to work a lot and hard to have an independent and fair courts. And glory to our armed forces, glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
На цьому наша співбесіда завершена. Всього
Thank you,
вам
Maryna.
найкращого.
So this is the
Бережіть
end of
себе.
your interview. All the best to you. Take care and goodbye. Goodbye.